Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to a full summer of live episodes of Into the Outer Realms. I am your host, Joey Medea, your guide through the outer realms where the paranormal and the supernatural become the normal and the natural. I want to start by thanking everyone. The numbers for the reposts, the episodes, while I was away the past 4 weeks, were outstanding. And I want to thank you all for continuing to support the show even when I was away. That means a lot to me. It means a lot to the Red Thread Collective, who I reposted, to Reverend Michael Carter for rewatching his interviews. Reverend Carter's going to be with us August 4th. I will run down at the end of the show tonight this summer. It's going to be a heavy ufology summer, but we also have some fringe theories, some information about the government. I'll talk more about those things at another time because I really do want to get to our not guests, but contributors. So since it's been a while, I'll just remind you all that an ITOR contributor is someone who is a guest on the show more than once. The audience absolutely love them. All of our guests are intelligent and well-spoken, but they are beyond, and they do the research. They're practitioners, which is so important to me, that they're not just researchers, but practitioners. So we have Michael Ginnetti and Ciel Luciole tonight with us again. I think it's probably the fourth or fifth time for Michael. It's the third time for Ciel, and we've been doing this series, not necessarily by design, but you all love it so much, on Wicca, Witchcraft and Magic. And tonight is the ethics of. And when I received the outline, I was so interested because there's so much that I didn't know about this area or had gotten wrong or made wrong assumptions about. So I'm going to get to our branding section. I am going to roll the opening. We're going to bring them back, and you are in for a terrific night of learning and great ideas. So welcome, everyone.
There exists a realm beyond our wildest dreams, a realm beyond reality that the gatekeepers and guardians have always told us consists of nothing but tricks of the eye, weather balloons, swamp gas, sand cranes, fairy tale myths of monsters, crackpot conspiracy theories, and desperate cries for attention.
We know this realm exists, and it's just beyond the horizon. The preset path, the well-worn walkways where the cynics want us to stay.
Instead, give this a listen. Put on your headphones, adjust your volume, close your eyes, and fasten your mental seatbelts, because the twilight-tinged turnoff from reality's alluring highway is looming just ahead.
We're about to leave the plane of the easily explained, couldn't possibly be's, and the no way I just saw what I saw's, for the spaces and places where everything is possible, and if you stay long enough, even probable. We're about to take a journey into the outer realms.
All right, I missed that opening while I was on the road. Good evening, Ronald. Hi, Tanya. Tanya's here. Guys, I know Michael and Ciel are going to be excited about that. Hello, Lori. Also, another one of our contributors. I owe Lori an email so we can figure out to have her on in September to talk about a topic of her choice. So let's bring on our two contributors, Michael and Ciel. Thank you, guys. After being away for 4 weeks, I'm so excited to have you two with me at the helm of the ship.
Well, we're definitely excited for you to be back. Trust me. So, and obviously
we've been looking forward to it.
Thank you. So, anything up you want to share with the audience about what's going on in these tumultuous times, or should we just dive right into the good stuff?
I have to start off by saying you actually had Ciel and I both cracking up on your last episode before your hiatus, because you were like, oh, these two have something up their sleeves and it's a secret. And the whole time Ciel and I were texting each other going, I don't know what to talk about. What are we going to talk about?
We had no idea at the time, like zero, none. We're like, it's so secret, we don't even know.
Into the outer realms, where all the behind the scenes stuff that you usually sell on DVDs and all, we just talk about out in the open. There are no secrets, but they absolutely came through. And with that, we're going to get into it, and we're going to let them not prove it to you, but show you that they knew what they were doing all along. So ethics in witchcraft and magic. Now, when you hear that, you go, well, yes, of course there have to be. This is dangerous, and of course we have to have ethics. So let's start with what you all title standard or commonly known codes of ethics within witchcraft and paganism. And there's actually several. So take them through us, and I'll just monitor the chat room and enjoy.
Did you want to get started, Mike, or?
No, you're good.
Right.
We always fight to try to see who's not going to talk. So
fair enough. Well, when you think about witchcraft and ethics, the very first thing 99.9% of people are going to think about the Wiccan Rede, and harm none, do as you will. Many people will actually erroneously caption it also as the Witch's Creed. They'll say the Wiccan or the Witch's Creed in an attempt to imply that all witches are bound by this particular code of ethics. First off, that's not the case. It is specific to Wicca. There's a lot more to the Wiccan Rede than just that sentence, and that's really something a lot of Wiccans who love to hammer that line home aren't aware of. It's actually a much larger piece. You might be familiar with it. It starts, abide the Wiccan laws we must in perfect love and perfect trust, and then it goes through this whole litany of things to do, like when the moon is full, blow a kiss to the moon twice in the evening. It rhymes. I don't remember it all. Sorry. But it's a very long thing going through these expectations of people who follow this path, and it concludes with and at harm none, do as you will. But a lot of people hear that, like, they think that a blanket pagan thing. Anybody who practices magic adheres to this code. And that's, not the case. And that's not to say that people who aren't Wiccans are, these evil demonic creatures running around slinging spells or anything, but there are witches who, in traditions where hexing and cursing is an expected part of practice, depending on the circumstances and the situations and the reason it's being used.
One of the things that I struggle with as far as the Wiccan Rede is concerned too is I was born and raised Catholic, so I'm so used to the standard stand, sit, kneel, back, forth. And, that kind of puts the whole practice kind of into that same mindset of, you must circle around counterclockwise 3 times and light these candles in these directions. And not that that's bad if that's what works for you, but it's a lot. And I remember, trying to work with a group of people who were working in that mindset, which is great. My brain doesn't work that way. So, I feel too, it's one of those where, a lot of people do that, but that doesn't make my witchcraft any less valid.
Sure.
Right.
Or any less powerful, because I do it in different ways. And actually, Ciel and I had this really long conversation when I first kind of met her, where she was explaining to me now, commonly speaking, when you do the 4 corners, you do, north this way, south this way. She does north that way, south that way. And my whole perception of everything was blown.
Right.
I was just like, what? How?
I just want to interject one thing. Last time you guys were on, I talked about, like, I'm deep diving into my Sicilian heritage, which means stregheria, and things like that. And I got these books, and I was just so exhausted and put off by the exactitude. Like, it was so like the Catholic Church that
Yes.
that I've found, as I've done in every other part of my life almost. I kind of learn the rules, and then I go off on my own and do what works for me.
And that was for me, because when you're newer to practicing, I did a lot of solitary work in the beginning, but when I started doing coven work, it's a matter of working, and playing well with others, obviously. But, when they start doing these things, I'm like, my first thought was, oh, okay, well, my entire life of Catholicism raised me for this because it was very, and it's fine and great. And I will never say that that's wrong or bad. It really just doesn't work for me. So, and I don't think, if somebody wants to practice Catholicism sitting the whole time, that's going to make them a bad Catholic,
Right.
So,
or it's become a big thing. My mom struggles with agoraphobia and things like that, so she watches the mass at home. And I remember when folks in my family got older, it was always this struggle, like, "Ooh, I watched the mass on TV." Well, you're still sort of participating.
exactly.
Yeah, so it's just, the strictures can be harmful. So so like Tanya said, you only need the ritual until you don't need the ritual. Or once the finger finds the moon, you don't need the finger anymore, is how I always heard it. So all right. Oh, thank you, Tony. Tony's here, the owner, the founder of the Buckland Museum. I had to
Hi,
wear it
Tony.
tonight with this subject. This is where Michael and I first met in person in Cleveland. Guys, check it out. Steven is the curator, and he's awesome. He has really seems to have come into his own and flowered during the whole lockdown and the videos, and it's been
I was going
wonderful
to say,
to see.
yeah, even just to follow them on Facebook to see some of their live streams and whatnot that they
Yeah,
do gives you a lot of good education as well.
absolutely. So thanks for joining us tonight, Tony. So let's pick up. Do you want to move on to the law of threefold return?
Sure. The law of threefold return. Oh, people do love their threefold law. Oh, they do. This is another one that people assume is kind of blanket for everyone. The concept of the law of threefold return is that anything you send out returns to you threefold. Like if you send out baneful magic, then things will come back to you times 3. Conversely, if you send out good magic or good intentions or good active, it's not unlike karma or law of cosmic return or what have you. But they're like ramping it up a little bit. They're like it's going to come back times 3 because there's some great big cosmic counter keeping track and dishing this stuff out. It's very common with the Wiccans because it comes from Gerald Gardner, but what a lot of people don't realize is that it came from a single line in one of his books. I believe it's, oh Lord, don't quote me, High Magic's Aid, I think. And there's a single line that says, and I'm going to butcher it, but whenever you receive good, you're bound to return it threefold. And it's like all archaic English and like super flowery and pretty, but I can't remember right now. But basically it says, whenever you are blessed with good fortune, you're bound to return it threefold. And that got put into some poem in a magazine around 75. And now they take it as hard and fast magic practice doctrine. And, a lot of Wiccans don't want to hear that, but it's true. Google search will tell them that. That's the origin of it is that one little quote. But there are magic practitioners. They will just double down, man. They believe that. They believe it. They just do. And that's fine if that's your jam, whatever. But it has been admitted by some of the old guard pagans that they hyped it in an effort to keep new practitioners in control. That in an effort to scare them on the straight magical path, essentially. Which sucky. I don't. I'm trying to. I can't think of words to say that and not
well, but it makes sense though, because there are some people who
say tenfold as well.
Yeah, so you start off in the practice, and you have some people who understand and realize very quickly that if you ever sit there and act like you're an expert, then you're not learning anything because there's so much to learn that you'll never be an expert. throughout your whole life. Like Ciel, you know, obviously you can hear she will spit out fact after fact after fact, and there's still stuff she doesn't know.
Yeah.
True.
And with how amazing she is with that. So like, you know, you'll get a lot of these newbies who will come in kind of with that cocky arrogance because they do one or two things and see the success in it. They're like, well, I'm this high priestess kind of, and it's, so I don't think it's fair or right. Like Ciel was saying, you know, for them to throw that out as like, you know, keeping them down. But still, I can kind of understand where some people might be annoyed by it.
And I do get what they're saying, but
yeah.
This isn't really on the topic of ethics, but I mean, I guess it is if you're looking at it from the viewpoint of our obligation as older practitioners in the community.
Mm-hmm.
Is it our obligation to gatekeep that way and scare them away from potentially, you know, experimenting and stretching their path? I'm not saying that, you know, people should just hex willy-nilly. That's not what I'm saying. Don't y'all think that. But
she's also saying not to. No.
You know what I'm saying? Like I get real pissy when people try and tell me what to do, and I just kind of feel, you know, I don't like it. Even if I necessarily agree, it's like, you know, I'm like that meme with the bird. They were saying, "Don't do that," and it's like that. It's like the second you.
And I could speak on that from complete experience because even, you know, we go to a coffee shop. I'm like, Ciel, you have to order. She takes 20 times longer.
I do not.
Yeah. Hold just one second. For those in the chat room who are saying you can't see each other's comments, you know, Facebook is not here to help us. Facebook is here to make money off us, and we're not giving them any money. So do the best you can. After the show, you should be able to go and review all the comments. Any comments other than saying hello to each other and catching up between yourselves, I will post so that you can see them. Okay, sorry. Yeah, how do you quantify or keep track? In the Bible, I think it's sevenfold. So you have in Reiki, it's tenfold. In the Bible, it's sevenfold. I suppose the Wiccans are being kind and they're only it's threefold. But like, say you get $100, that means you got to give away $300 because that math is kind of sketchy.
Right, right.
It's not practical.
Well,
but also too, you know, when you look at the idea of if you put out something good, you're going to get something good times 3.
Yeah.
Well, why do you do something good when you're only expecting something in return?
Yeah.
That's not the reason you should be doing it. So
great point.
For me, that's where I struggle with that mentality of it, because I need to do it because it's for the greater good of humanity, not for my ego or for me to get something in return. Sorry,
that it's the world itself has debunked this theory. I mean, take a look around. There's some truly evil people who continue to win and some truly wonderful people who continue to struggle. So the world has gone ahead and debunked all that for you. So if you want to believe it, cool. I'm not here to tell you what to do, but it's just all in an effort to, you know, keep in mind that this particular tenet is specific to one subsect of witchcraft, which is Wicca. Wicca is its own tradition, its own form of witchcraft, and it is a codified oral tradition. That's one thing a lot of people understand about Wicca. They think that, you know, they buy Scott Cunningham's book and they're a Wiccan, and I'm not telling them that they're not, because they are the new Wiccans, yes, but what you're getting in Scott Cunningham's book is what I call Wicca light. And I don't say that disrespectfully. I say that because you're not getting the things that you get as a second or third degree initiate. Many things that go into Wicca that are not in that book. He's basically giving you the quarters and the associations and basic altar ritual setups. Level 1 dedicant stuff is what you get. There are 3 degrees to Wicca. Depending on the tradition, there might be more.
I'm sorry, that made me laugh. My last name is Potter. I felt obligated to be here. I agree.
Not too far off the topic, but you know, Wicca is a codified tradition. It's got a very set, specific code of how to behave, and because there is such a prevalence to conflate Wicca with witchcraft in general, it's kind of become assumed that that is the blanket code of ethics for every witch in the world.
Right.
I've actually been told you you're not a Wiccan. I'm like, I've been managing it for 25 years or so, so I don't know what to tell you.
That's actually one reason too why I use the term witch and not Wiccan or pagan or whatever else out there, because I don't want to be held down to a set of rules, whether they're legit or not, or because again, that's how it works for me. I do my thing how I do it, and yeah, I followed some of those rules, and some of those rules do work for me, but I don't want to be tied down to that one specific. So I'm more, broaden more across the board. I can't talk today.
No,
what I do. And
that's a great point. And my background more is in shamanism, and I don't go around. You'll never see on my resume that I'm a shaman, or even, in certain circumstances, I'll say, yeah, I've studied shamanism for 25 years. But Tanya and I had a really bad experience probably about 15, maybe 20, almost 20 years ago with a coven that was kind of really distorted under the Wiccan. It was like, well, all Wiccans are shamans, but not all shamans are Wiccans, and all Wiccans are this, but not everybody. And it just turned me. You can't, whether you're getting a 3-fold return, 100-fold return, or you're simply shining your light, which, like Michael said, is the point. What you call yourself, or where you are on that ladder of hierarchy, or what titles you have behind your letters, is totally and completely besides the point to me, and it's frankly a turnoff. So I like where you guys are going. Let's just watching the time. The Troth of Nine. That sounds so ancient.
I actually misspoke. It's the Troth of Nine is an organization. What I meant to write was the 9 noble virtues, which is.
I was wondering. I was going to say, because isn't it the Ring of Troth or something, or is the organization?
Yeah, they're a heathen organization. What I meant to put down was the 9 noble virtues, with a Norse heathen association. It's actually the code of ethics for Asatru, or Asatru, depending on how you pronounce it. I've heard it both ways. I don't actually know which is correct. Which is a Norse heathen tradition. Some of them are folkish and associated with neo-Nazi right and whatnot, but not all of them, obviously. And this is their code of ethics, and it basically just gives a list of virtues that they expect everybody in their community to live by, like courage, kindness, protect the weak, things like that. Obod in England, which is the order of bards, Ovids, and Druids. I always get that messed up. The Druid order in England, they have their own code of ethics. ADF, which is the American Druid. ADF stands for Arnriocht Fain, which it means our Druidry, which is the American Druids. They have their own code of ethics. So most established traditions have, if not a code of ethics, a code of conduct at the very least. Basically saying, if you're going to be associated with us, don't be a big old douche, whatever way they want to say.
Right.
Is what it boils down to. Sorry, I'm trying to clean it up.
That's good.
But most established traditions do have something of that sort. And not all of them fall under the auspices of harm none. Many of the non-Wiccan traditions see hexing and cursing as having its place. There is an old adage that says the wicks who cannot hex cannot heal. Because if you take in, because, Lord, if I could talk properly here, when you pagan, animist, witch idea that everything is alive, everything has its own spirit, even those negative things that we try to get rid of is part of nature. Like when you cure cancer, you're destroying the cancerous cell, which is part of nature. Cancer is produced by nature, like it or not, it is. So you are destroying something of nature to save the person. And that's a very specific scenario, but it's the concept of hexing or cursing into a different light, because there are instances where it is appropriate to use magic to defend yourself, at least in my personal opinion. And that is the opinion of many traditions. Some people also might draw a line of differentiation between the terms hexing and the terms cursing. Some folks consider hexing just more of any magical act, because the word hex itself in German means witch or magic. So they might, plus there's the Pennsylvania Dutch hexcraft, which is their folk magic. So hex in and of itself might just mean to work magic on another person, whether it's painful or good. You could even say it's a healing hex, intended to heal the person. Cursing, you always come in for someone when you're cursing them. There's no way around that. You're coming for someone for something.
Like a witch street fight.
I mean, and that's not, and don't get it wrong, folks. I'm not sitting here, go curse your enemies, become a witch just for the, hexing people, because I know people who've done it. That's not what I'm saying. But witchcraft has always been, and I've said this in the other shows I've been with you folks, witchcraft has always been political. It has always been a tradition of activism. It has always been a tradition of the oppressed, of people who have absolutely nothing but their own will left. So not every witch is going to say, I'm not going to use magic in that way. And if they're fighting for themselves or for their family, they very likely might incorporate magic. I certainly will if I need to protect myself or my loved ones. I have no issue with that. For myself, my moral compass, I ask myself, okay, if the person in question were in front of me right now and I could physically do something about it, would I? If the answer is yes, then I have absolutely no problem bringing my magic into it.
Right.
That's how I keep myself with my personal practice. I don't really have a whole lot of, I don't personally put a lot of stock in the law of threefold return, well, iffy on karma, but I have my own, I want to be a certain type of person. I want to walk a certain way in my path. So that's how I personally gauge my own, when I'm not sure if I'm just coming from a place of anger and wanting to get revenge. If I had the means to handle it legally, would I? Is it something important enough that I would pursue legally? Then I know it's important enough to use my magic on. And I'm not up here trying to sound like a saint. That's not to say if I feel threatened, I'm going to do what I have to do, is basically what it boils down to. It's the case whether it's I'm being physically come after or magically come after, I will do what I have to do physically as well. So that also goes back to, would I handle it physically in the same way? The way down to it, that's just who I am as a person. And magic is one of the tools in my arsenal because I am a witch, and that is historically what witchcraft has been for. It is for marginalized people, for marginalized women. It is for people who have no power. So many witches will not accept that harm none credo. They absolutely will not, because they will come down and say, no, I will defend myself by any means necessary. And if that means magic, then that means magic. But there are those people who, like Mike actually brought up a very good point when he mentioned coming from a background and finding the tenets of Wicca to be too similar as far as expectations for participation and the dogma. Basically, I often refer to it as Wiccan dogma. I do very frequently. Wiccans don't always like me, let's be real. But it must be this way. And if you're a Wiccan and tradition, dope, I'm happy for you. But too many of the old guard believe that is the only way to be, because for the longest time, that was the only example of paganism and witchcraft that you had, because Gardner hit the scene and put all this, it's basically ceremonial witchcraft wrapped up in a witch suit. I mean, let's be real.
Right.
Ceremonial magic, get it directly from the OTO and the Golden Dawn. And they just slap a bunch of, witch cult names on it and called it something new, but it's something brand spanking new, but they tried to tout it as something ancient and charlatan is what they there was much.
Right. You always want to build your lineage. I know. I'm reading Holy Blood, Holy Grail now, right? About the Priory of Zion, which has been totally debunked. But the key to that whole thing is tracing your lineage to the Merovingian. So you gave us a lot to think about, and there's some great observations and questions in the. I just wanted to say, having lived in socio-political activism mode actively for a month, there's passive non-resistance, which obviously has its place, and that's how we want it. But as you said, if someone's coming for you to take, and maybe this is a separate topic, so we'll do it. And Michael, I want to hear your thoughts on hexing and cursing, but I want to give the audience a voice too. To take what they're sending you and turn it back on them. Like I've always liked, I've spoken to very powerful witches who, you know, they came at my child and I caught it and I threw it back on them and it hit them harder than it came to me. So the mechanism of that, I think would be appropriate to talk to. So before we hear from Mike, let's go here. So Jim says, I don't understand the fascination with hexing on TikTok and such. Binding, banishing, and even taking away blessings has always seemed much more effective. So this is out of my depth. So you two comment on it.
Hi, Jim.
That's actually my biggest piece to all of this. Most of the time is somebody wrongs me. Like Ciel said, you have to be at a specific point to take a harsher action.
Sure.
I would never just do it willy-nilly, but my typical and usual is when somebody does me wrong, I typically go to the binding and banishing, because for me, it's one of those, let me try to mute them. And if that doesn't work, then we go stronger.
So what's happening on TikTok? Like people are actually doing hexing ceremonies and
that I don't have TikTok.
Lord help me, witch talk.
Witch talk.
Yeah, they love to make their videos about hexing and cursing, and that's cool. Like I've said, I'm not going to gatekeep anyone. Do you? If something that you can't handle, that's on you for not doing your homework. I mean, I know that sounds a little bit harsh, but at the same time, you're a grown up. I'm not going to tell you how to practice. And I'm never going to gatekeep someone's experience. But speaking of what Jim was saying, there's just been so much off about hexing on Witch Talk. And a couple years ago, I believe right before the pandemic, the two big ones that caught me that just had me in absolute hysterics. One was they were going to hex the Fae.
You and Jim are aligned. Here you go. There it is.
He's my homie. They were going to hex. See, he knows. I ranted about. He knows. I rant all the time, but people are sick of me. Yeah, they were going to hex the Fae, which one of my nicknames is the Fairy Queen, so I took that a little personally.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay. But I was like, all right, good luck with that. You let me know how that comes out on the other side for you. The one that I just thought was just stupid, and I'm sorry, I'll make a witch talk video and be like, y'all stupid. They're gonna hex the moon. The moon, like the in the sky reflecting sunlight moon. They were gonna hex the moon for some reason. I'm like, what did the moon ever do to you, yo? Like, wow. And it's just it's so ridiculous. But there is a lot of focus on hexing and cursing, and I do. Lord, my horde is coming out in droves. Hi, y'all. I lost my train of thought. Damn it, Bresco.
Sorry about that.
Nope, that's okay. What was I talking about, Mike? Come on, you're supposed to keep me on
about cursing the moon.
Cursing the moon, yes.
I just blanked out too.
that I just thought was the dumbest thing I've ever heard, and I don't understand the point. But yeah, they love to talk about hexing. They love to talk about cursing. But like Jim said, what you have to understand is if you've decided to curse someone, that is usually the last resort. That is not the go-to. That is not your first, oh, well, this broad ate my last damn banana, hexing time. Like, no, that's not how, it's the last resort and usually reserved for the direst of circumstances. There are many other actions one can take that don't involve hexing. Like Jim said, binding, banishing, like Mike said. Like you mentioned, I'm a big fan of what I refer to as the return to sender spell, where I just, send back their energy, because that is not on me. That's the energy they put into the universe. They can deal with it. It's not my problem.
And even too, I saw Lori put in the comments about having jars with names in it. I would say that having.
I got jars.
Well, I was just
I gotta hear about that.
I got jars. Yeah. I got a freezer full of bitches.
Well, and I was going to say, freezing people's names and pictures, because that's part of the binding of it. You're trying to stop them in their course. So
okay, perfect. So let's stop right there. Binding and banishing for me as a field investigator in the paranormal may mean something. So, Michael, define those two things in terms of witchcraft.
So they're really kind of one and the same, but banishing is more keeping their bad energy away, and binding is tying it up to them so they can't reflect it out onto somebody else.
Oh, nice.
So basically, if somebody is, I've had scenario in the past, and I know Ciel will probably make faces while I'm saying this because she knows what I'm talking about, who I've had people who have been coming for, me or my friends, and again, that's one of those, they were getting to the extreme point where we could have just simply put a curse on them. Mm-hmm. But instead we did a banishing and a binding. So what we were doing is we were taking their bad energies, and every time they were trying to push it out on us, it was coming back and hitting them.
Yeah.
And then
I like that.
Every time they were trying to put something out, they were exposing themselves in different ways.
Oh, right.
So like I said, it's one of those, I don't mind putting out a curse if I have to, but I try not to, just because to me that's a lot of work that I don't want to have to put into it. So if I can take the nicer approach first, that's how we're going to do it. But doing those certain rituals, like I said, started exposing the person and started making their rituals shift and change in a not good way for them, that I made them stop pretty quickly on us. So
Jim, I don't even want to talk about what's in my freezer right now. I got baggies upon baggies upon baggies.
So this is the thing. I did not know this thing, and I don't think Tanya knows, because we just have like vegetables and ice packs and gelatos in our freezer. And it's not because it's not like I can't get a stack of paper after tonight's show and get busy. Like, I'm fully capable of that. So this is the thing, huh?
Yeah.
No one's told me about
I love putting people in the freezer. The idea is their name on a piece of paper, put them in a Ziploc baggie, put in a water, toss them in the freezer. The idea is that it freezes and stops their behavior towards you, whatever
and
that
if you have a lot of issues with a lot of people, the easiest route to take is put their name in a piece of paper in an ice cube tray, and then you put all those little ice cubes in one Ziploc baggie, and it's like a little apartment complex of people who can't go near you.
I'll come in for you time, but I've never needed to.
Put them in a glass and pour Diet Coke over them, so bad things happen to them. I love it. I'm getting into this. So I'm going to play devil's advocate here. We have a very intelligent audience, but sometimes people stumble in after the fact or something. This is not like voodoo. So when you freeze somebody's name, they're all of a sudden like, I can't get warm no matter what I do. Like,
no, but can I tell you one of my favorite misconceptions about voodoo?
Yeah, is
that voodoo is strictly bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not.
I actually have spent quite a bit of time of my life studying voodoo and its practices. I have a long-standing relationship with Papa Legba. It is that type of magic. It is that type of American folk magic, but it's not sympathetic magic in the way what is occurring to the name is occurring to the person. That's more in line with like puppet magic. We're using the dolls, something physically to represent the person. You're just kind of generally names have power. So you have the person's name. If one of the scariest things I could ever say to you is, what's your middle name? Heathens hear me out. What's your middle name? No matter how sweet I am, I'm usually super sweet till I'll be like, so what's your middle name? And
duly noted.
Yeah. So Joey, no kidding.
I'm just going to tell you it's Anthony because I trust you. So there, you have it, and you don't have to ask. Now, Tanya's asking a good question here. They're all great questions. That's why I love our audience. What if you suspect someone is cursing you, but you don't know who it is? We went through that about 4 or 5 years ago. What do you two do personally?
Excuse me. Allergies are not nice to me today, y'all. Sorry. For me personally, I would do two things, either stages or all at once. First off, I would do some kind of work, some kind of what I would refer to a bring the light spell, to bring knowledge of the person to my awareness, however that happens. And secondly, that is when you get more into the realm of less banishment, because when you are banishing someone, you're removing them and their negativity and their intentions. But if you don't know who that is, you can do a general banishing. That's always effective. But without a name, without a target, it's, buckshot versus a sniper rifle. So in that instance, what I would do is do a working focusing on, and I would use broad terms like the person actively moving against me, or any person's moving against me. Anybody who does not have my best and highest good, who, whatever phrasing works for the scenario. I feel that there's like a group of people who are kind of moving against you, talking trash, whatever. Then you can kind of do a blanket. Anyone who does not have my best and highest good, anyone who has malevolent thoughts or feelings towards me, etc. Because I've done this kind of blanket spells in other ways, like I removed people from my life and the lives of anyone who no longer wishes them. So kind of more of a blanket thing. So anybody who might not practice magic, who genuinely wants that influence gone, would also be covered under it. There are loopholes. I always tell people there are loopholes, and wording is everything. Wording, like any baby witch I've ever taught, I've hammered this home from the get-go. Wording is everything. Watch how you phrase things. I actually, one of the girls in my group, speaking of wardings and banishings, she had moved into her new house with her husband, and her husband's brother moved in with them, and she did not want him there anymore. So she was doing all this work to try and get her space back to herself, and out of nowhere started feeling really depressed, really sad, like she needed to leave, like she didn't belong there. And I'm talking to her one night she's like, I don't know why I'm so sad. And I just start poking, and I don't know what occurred to me to ask. And I was like, so you've been working all this magic to reclaim your space, but he's still living in your house, right? And she's like, yeah, currently. And I was like, you warded your house when you moved in, right?
Oh, yeah.
How did you ward it? Turns out she warded it to protect anyone within the walls against any form of magic. She was bouncing off her whole own wards because she didn't think to rephrase what she was doing to dismantle her own wards around the process. So verbiage is everything, and choosing how you word something can completely alter what you're doing. There's always a way around everything. That's the beauty of magic. There's always a way around it. So in those instances, definitely do some work to bring to light those who are moving against you. I'm very big fan of those, so that the world can see their perfidy, basically.
Right.
About it and everything. Then I would just send out whatever you were doing, whatever that is, wording, banishing, protecting, strengthen your own protections always. And your own wards can be set to automatically bounce back against people. Like I have 3 layers, and they just are automatically in place. I've been working on them for so long, I don't even have to think about them anymore. There are people in the chat who have felt them, so they can attest to that. A little bit stingy. So warding, your own protections, always keep your own protections first and foremost. That's the biggest thing I can tell anyone. Always get your own protections tight first, whatever that means. Your personal wards, protection for your home, and then term for anyone sending on you. Anyone, use the blanket term. Anyone who does not have your best and highest good, who's moving malevolently against you, however it works for your situation.
Right.
Long answer for a very short question.
No, it was complicated. And before I turn it over to Michael, I just want to say, you have to know that these things have power and they work. That's right. That's the intention.
Mm-hmm.
That's the belief. When Tanya and I were selling our holler house, it took us over 2 years to sell the house. We couldn't figure it out. People loved the house, but it wasn't. And then one day it hit me. Before they built the house, I went to the property and buried stones in the 4 corners and did a ceremony and said, as long as we are good custodians of this property, may it never, may we be able to stay as, and I unburied those stones or undid the ritual, and it sold within a week.
There you go.
So, just a good summation there. Michael, your take on this when you think someone's coming at you, but you don't know who?
My real initial start to that would not be trying to expose anybody else, but putting up a barrier around myself. Mm-hmm. Because to me, first and foremost, it's one of those, I want to know who did it, and I want to know how I'm going to be coming back to you. But I want to make sure I'm correct first. Right. Because I can't come back to you if I'm not correct. So usually I look at it kind of like the Rapunzel effect, where it's the huge tower that nobody could get in or out of. So I do it that way, where anything that you try to bring to me energetically is going to just bounce right back off of you. Was that Ciel?
Oh, the sun is shifting in my room, and there's this weird beam of light.
Oh,
it's kind of cool.
But yeah, so I try to, that's my main point of contention, is to start with that, because like I said, I want to make sure no matter what. But typically speaking, whenever things start to happen, for me, it's not so much needing to necessarily go to spells and rituals or to find out who's doing it. You kind of can just, step back. If you actually are able to, look outside of yourself and see who you're hanging out with, see what activities are happening with others around you. A lot of times you can find it out on your own, right? Just from that. So, right. So I typically don't feel necessarily that you need to do that all the time. Now, granted, there can be circumstances and situations that cause that. But that's just not typically the route I've taken. And I did see too that I think it was Jim mentioned using either Ouija board.
Or let me put that up. There you go.
Yeah, thank you. So I know Ciel and I have both used tarot together, trying to see if we can pull attributes from a person who may be doing things to us that way. Spirit board, I've never done that myself for that. I just try to do that more to just communicate with the dead in general. So,
right. We had I don't know if Craig is still here, but we had a situation with someone who purported to be something they weren't. And so we started to take actions to limit that person's access to the world, right? Mm-hmm. We had been party to giving this person access, and we wanted to kind of undo that. And there was a mentor or a force behind him, and it became clear that you need to ward yourself. If you're doing this work, and we're all doing this work, you need to, like Tanya and I just don't put salt and iron in the windowsills if something it's too late, right? Yeah. So we just keep everything warded all the time, keep the mirrors closed and all that kind of thing. Because, and I want to bring this around, and then I want to bring it to the closing part of this discussion, to Act 3, if you would. So Tanya says, for those who are listening on ERT Radio and Patriot in the future, I think too, often people don't even realize they're sending negative energy, or doing so whenever their intentions or feelings towards you are negative. This is why attention is important. Jealousy, resentment, bitterness can all send negative energy to a person who is the object of those feelings. Now, Tanya, once with a neighbor, and then once with someone who I spent 3 weeks with on a project, who kind of got a crush and thought something was going to happen. They happen to, I don't even know why I'm saying this, but they both happen to be women. They just both happen to be women. That's all I'm saying. I'm sure men are capable of this too. But for slightly different reasons, one for personal and one more material, you could feel their energy their jealousy, their for the person who thought something was going to happen with me when I posted a picture of Tanya and I, or our anniversary or her birthday. Oh, by the way, I just love my beautiful bride, which anybody who knows, I talk about that all the time. You could feel that. You could feel that energy. So what for the both of you? What's your position on? And I'm going to use this to get into Act 3. What's your position on this idea of people are doing this unintentionally?
Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I was going to say, I think first and foremost, if they're doing it unintentionally, that just shows that they're not really cognizant of what's in their head.
Yeah.
Because you possess the power to send out, every piece of energy, positive, negative, or in between. But at the same time, too, if you're a person that consistently pushes for positive vibes and energy on yourself, I think that really does kind of help counterbalance when people are being negative and, giving you that stank eye. Because, they're going to sit there and, okay, so Ciel was talking about, the curses and putting the words in a certain way to make sure that, so, when you're doing it subconsciously, you're just spitting out. You're not thinking of the actions, the ramifications. So a lot of times those things will end up coming back on that person. Right. And so that negativity is going to still stick with them and not the person who's living optimistically and positive. So,
right. And that's true. These are not happy people. Mm-hmm. These are not people who are happy, yet they're beaming, hatred your way. It's like they're mutually exclusive. Ciel, your thoughts on that?
I do think that people often and easily send negativity without realizing it, unintentional energy. And more than often than not, it is from people who aren't practitioners, because it's not framed in their thoughts as energy and intention. They're just pithy, they're just jealous, they're just angry. They're not thinking, oh, I better check all this negativity, because they don't that way, so it doesn't occur to them. And I believe that happens quite a bit. I mean, we all have the internet, we've seen it. It's absolutely possible to unwittingly send hordes of negativity towards people. And depending on how strong it is, it can be, even if they don't fashion it with a specific intention, because their fixation is so strong that if they ever did practice magic, they'd probably spells would work like gangbusters, but
right.
They don't. They're so focused. They're so intent on that anger, that bitterness. It becomes a focal point, and it in itself becomes their intention, even if they're not sitting there going, okay, I'm going to send this out to them. It becomes an unspoken intention, an unknown intention. So yes, I absolutely believe that happens. That's why my personal wards are always in place. There's never a point that I'm not protected. Always. So that's why when Mike said his first to make sure his wards are up, that's not my first reaction, because they're always there. It is something I maintenance regularly.
Right.
Because a lot of people don't, people are angry these days. There's a lot of negativity in the world right now, whether people intend to be a source of it or not. There's anger, there's sadness, there's rage, there's so much. Cognizant of how we're releasing it into the world. If we're focusing on one person as the source, you easily can begin to send negative energy, negative intentions their way without fashioning it as a spoken intention.
Right.
Absolutely. I do very much believe that. I forgot what else I was going to say about that.
You think about that. I want to address what David said. He says, "Oh God, it's the topic of unintentional energy work and the power therein." There's a topic, and it really is. In the case of this one woman, she was dabbling, but she had
dabblers.
She had and David's second comment kind of addresses that, and I have an analog. I try to use analogs to broaden people's experience, but what was I going to say? Oh, things attached to people into their energy field. Like Tanya and I have encountered a lot of them. And this woman, she had this thing attached to her, who knows, maybe lifetimes. And it rode that intention into our energy fields and did some damage to Tanya and I. So that was the other thing that David is saying here. They're not practitioners, so it's energy running rampant, which can make it entirely powerless or kind of problematic. So our daughter Jolie studied Taekwondo for a long time, and her instructor would always say, you could be a black belt in Taekwondo, do not have a fight with a drunk in the Walmart parking lot. Because they don't play by the rules, and there's no way to know what's going to happen, what they're going to do, because they don't know. And so I just wanted to make that analog. So we're running out of time almost, guys. So this I found very provocative. Do magical paths require a code? Are they necessary? Because witches historically did not have concepts such as harm none until the advent of Gerald Gardner and Wicca neo-paganism, which you've kind of covered all of this, but last word for each of you. Michael, we'll start with you this time. Are they necessary, and how have you sort of built your personal code of ethics, if you have one?
I don't think they're necessary because I was born and raised with morals and compassion. So I don't think I need a practice to tell me to be a good person on the daily. I think that's just what I should do as a human. So as far as harming none, yeah, I would never want to harm anyone unless they come for me the wrong way. Like Ciel said, but it's not going to be because you looked at me crooked. It's going to be because it's something that would justify, like she said, legal action. Or if it's something I was willing to go to jail for, then maybe I would have to take that kind of action. So, I know I'm not going to probably ever do that, but I'm not going to ever sit there and say I can't do that because it's because it's not. Like I said, a lot of practitioners love to throw out the words love and light, love and light, love and light. And that's great, but you know what? There's also darkness or sorrow. And how are you ever going to be well-rounded in your practice if you only know one portion of it? So, you can't, granted, you don't want to go around cursing the world, but how are you going to know?
Sometimes I do.
Well, you do. I'm talking about the general person. But, you don't want to necessarily go around doing that on the daily. But at the same time, you have to understand what it is. Because if not, you're going to just be sitting there, hippy dippy, love and light, love and light, love and light. And you're probably going to have all kinds of people attacking you left and right. So
Right. The flower child hippie kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, hey man, and that's an episode that's coming up. What they did, what the U.S. government did to the flower child hippy dippy people. Craig Ansel and I are joining forces on that. Ciel, last word.
I don't think it's necessary. I think that if you need a spiritual practice to tell you to not be an evil person, then there's no spiritual practice in the world that's going to stop you from being an evil person, as the Catholic Church can attest. Sorry, I went there. But, it's because clearly, Christianity is supposed to be the biggest source of love and Jesus and all that, whatever. And they're also one of the biggest sources of pain and suffering in the world. So clearly, spirituality and religion make you a good person. And insisting on a code of ethics in magic, I think, is pointless. If you have a standard of conduct, if you want to set an expectation, if you're going to be part of this tradition, it is the expectation that you will steward the earth and take measures in conservation. Cool. That's fine. I have no issue with that because that's an expectation for active participation if you choose to be a part of the organization. We have expectations that you will work within your community to actively alleviate the suffering. Fine. I have no issues with that. But when you start getting into the of ethics as far as, well, don't do that, we think it's bad. And it's not something basic like don't hurt people. You know what I mean? And unless it comes down to don't hurt people, and that covers everything, stealing, lying, all of that. Don't hurt people. That is literally the end all be all. Don't hurt people. Start drifting away from that into realms of, well, you must blow a kiss twice to the moon when the moon is full, or else you're not a good Wiccan. Then I just,
Isn't it supposed to be 3 times, Ciel?
What was that?
Isn't it supposed to be 3 times?
I thought it was
Everything's
twice, but
times
we'll
3.
look that mess
No,
up when we log
I was
off.
being funny because of the times 3.
Yeah, and then before you know it, we're hexing the moon. So
Right, then we're
Yeah.
and it's a whole thing.
yeah.
And then it's just a whole big deal. So no, I don't think it's necessary. By all means, if you want to set down a code of conduct and expectations for how you're going to move in the community, cool. But morality is different, and
Yeah.
morality isn't something that a spiritual religion can define for you. Everyone has their own sense of morality. Like Mike and I have slightly different. Like I'm, a different kind of witch, so I get a little more chaotic than he does. But we have our own way of going about it. So I'm more.
But we're
likely,
still very similar in a lot of ways.
very similar. Very strongly, as I see people talking about the shadow side, I work very strongly with the shadow side and within the shadow and all of that. So I might be willing to cast a spell that is something he wouldn't really think about doing. That doesn't necessarily mean I lack a moral compass. I just have a slightly different set of morals. And until I start hurting people, like arbitrarily harming people with no cause, as far as self-defense or what have you, until I start doing that, I don't think anybody needs to open their mouth about my practice.
Right. So here's my thought. I think in October we should have you guys back. We don't have to wait till Halloween or any kind of nonsense like that.
I was like the Halloween episode.
Well, we could, but that's a long
Yeah.
way from now. I like this idea of the shadow side because I'll quote the Gospel of St. Thomas, which is not an accepted gospel in the Catholic Church, but one of the wisest. But when you bring forth, what you bring forth will save you. What you don't bring forth will destroy you. And that's what Charles was saying. If you don't deal with your shadow side, if you don't deal with that dark, whatever you want to term it, the parts that you don't want to talk about, I would love to talk about that with you guys. And then I think we can also expand out to the unintentional, how our shadow manifests. Because if you keep that corked in a bottle, it's coming out. It's coming out regardless as it gets stronger. So give that some thought and let me know.
No problem. I could talk about that right now. I mean,
yeah, and I could too. I could easily do an hour on that because it's been my whole life that integration of the shadow and getting to know the shadow. It's part of my work as an artist, as an actor, as a writer. But anyway, shadow work is hard, so that's why it's not popular. Yeah. So hard. It sounds like this is something we should do.
Very true.
Yeah.
We all know I have opinions.
Yeah, well, that's why we have you on here. So I want to thank the audience. I want to thank Mike and Ciel. Just stay. I don't want to bring you off because you're contributors. So I want you to stay till the very end. I'm just going to run down what I think is a pretty awesome summer for everybody. So next week is Wes G. Roberts. So we're going to be talking about ufology. July 24th, we're going to get a little political. We're going to have Brent Hunter back on the show. Excuse me, my voice is giving out. Brent has an organization called the Rainbow Bridge. He's been on the show before. He's really working to get the UN General Council to have more power than the Security Council. So over 100 countries could have more power than 5 countries. Seems kind of logical, but it's getting a lot of pushback. So we're going to have Brian on. July 28th, Craig and I are doing MK Ultra, Coin Intel Pro. If you do not know what these things are, what the government was doing in the 50s and 60s through the CIA and the FBI to the counterculture, you need to watch this because things that are going on now. August 4th, Craig and I are on with Reverend Carter. We're doing an open forum, but we're calling BS on the disclosure, UFO government disclosure. August 11th, another ufologist, Mark Fiorentino. August 18th and September 1st, Craig and I are going to have some shows. September 22nd, the moon kept coming up tonight. Woman Victoria Briggs has written an encyclopedia of mysteries of the moon. And we're going to have her on. So don't miss. And now we know what we're doing in October, some of it. So we're back. We're pushing for 200 episodes or more. Everybody join me in thanking Ciel and Michael. Folks who came and checked us out for the first time because of them, I hope you come back. I appreciate you coming in and supporting your friends. I'm just going to throw some things up here. Guys, say goodnight and all that good stuff.
Okay, thank you so much for having us. And
all
Tanya,
right.
we miss you.
Miss you, Joey, without the big beard. The big beard was a thing that
Oh my God, I
never
didn't even
have to do
notice.
again. Yeah.
I just now noticed. Oh my God.
Yeah. Go back and look at the archives. That thing was.
I know. I'm
So-
like,
Yeah, but it all worked out. So here, everyone giving you the love. Here's the love. Here comes the love. A hurricane of love. Great show, people. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and experience. Tanya misses us all. Babe, we miss you. I'll talk to you in a couple minutes. Good night, everyone. Join us next week on Into the Outer Realms, where the paranormal, the supernatural become the normal and the natural, and everybody treats each other with love and respect. Goodbye.